Hey, welcome back to Robot Cantina. Today I'll say something nice about Honda, and we'll do some other stuff. But first things first, let's go for a ride in our street legal go-kart. You guys ready?
Let's go!
Boy, I wish it was that easy. Now here's what really happened. Earlier in the day, I went ahead and ran the engine for just over an hour, and that was to do a quick break-in and to warm up the transmission. Next, the fuel tank was filled up right to the lower edge of the fill neck. This is so we can start our trip off with a known quantity of gasoline, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. The spark plug was fitted with a thermocouple so we can monitor the cylinder head temperature. And over here we have another thermocouple, and that keeps track of the air temperature around the carburetor. This temperature is good to know because if the temperature gets too high, we'll start to lose some power, and in our case we can't afford to have that happen. Now as far as the tires go, I went ahead and pumped them up to 40 psi. Well, I actually only did 3 of them. The last one looked kinda low, but I didn't bother to check. Just kidding. Jeez, you guys. Alright. Well, I'm going to shut my pie hole for a minute and let you enjoy the music of the 420
Big block!
Going through its paces. So here I pulled into a little neighborhood and puttered around for a little bit. Keep in mind the transmission is still in 5th gear and the CVT system is doing a phenomenal job at transferring the engine's power to make effortless driving. So my confidence was pretty high at this point, and I decided to pull out onto a real road. I guess it was around here where one of our channel subscribers actually see me driving around. And yeah, buddy, that was me. So in the beginning of the video, I mentioned the fuel tank was topped off. Let's see how much fuel we used. Wow, that looks like the level dropped quite a bit. Anyway, at this point I filled the tank back up and kept track of how much fuel I put in. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at some numbers. On our trip today we covered 21 miles or 33.8 kilometers. It took 0.549 gallons or 2.5 liters to bring the fuel tank back up to the level we started with. So 21 miles divided by 0.549 works out to about 35 miles to the gallon, or 15 kilometers per liter, whatever that means. It could be worse. Now hang on, we're not done yet. Now let's talk some performance, which believe it or not, this car has some. The top speed was a very respectable 50 miles per hour at 4,200 RPM, and that works out to be 80 kilometers per hour. Now downhill we got the car up to 51 miles an hour, and for the metric route, that's just a little bit faster. Now something else I noticed, the accelerator pedal needs to be completely smashed against the floor to get the engine up to max speed, and that's nothing more serious than an adjustment of the throttle cable. Now let's talk 0 to 30 miles per hour time. You may have noticed the car was in third gear when we did the 0 to 30 mile per hour run, and the reason for that is, that's how we tested the little 212cc engine. So it's just a matter of apples and apples. Well, we managed to get our 1,300 pound street legal go-kart up to 30 miles an hour in 13 seconds. Are you done? Anyway, sounds pathetic, and it is. But keep in mind, when we tested the stock 212cc engine, we did 0 to 30 in a mind-blowing 25 seconds. So put that in perspective. Stop it! Let me give you some of my driving impressions. Overall, the street legal go-kart performed incredibly well for its first road test. And dare I say, this car officially qualifies as a real post-apocalyptic mode of transportation. Not something you'd see in a Mad Max movie, but it's real close. So some of you might ask, hey Jimbo, is it time for the turbo? Not yet. I have some ideas.
Sprockets! Sprockets!
Sprockets!
So before we do any engine modifications, I feel we need to address the sprocket situation. And the plan is to start swapping out sprockets until we find the right balance. Now I can easily set up the sprocket ratios to theoretically get the car to go 150 miles an hour. That's not a problem. The real problem is we only have 13 to 15 horsepower on tap, and aerodynamic drag starts to factor in above 40 miles an hour. And I'll tell you, aerodynamic drag sucks up a load of horsepower, and we ain't got any to spare. Now if you recall, in episode 12 we built an overly complicated chain tensioner system, and part of the complexity was to allow us to change the driven sprocket without too much effort. So I guess that was a good plan. Anyway, let's take a look at what I just said was going to be simple. Now believe it or not, there's some real cars out there that don't have the to climb a service ramp like this little car can do. So basically all we have to do is pop out the master link on the chain and take out exactly 9 easily reachable bolts. Then we can slide the sprocket off and swap in a new one. Of course we'll have to cut a new chain, but that's no problem. Right now some of you will realize that there's another way to go faster, and that is to get rid of the governor. So the main purpose of the governor is to stabilize the engine RPM at whatever level it's set to, and that's done through a direct feedback loop. The secondary purpose of the governor is to limit the maximum safe operating speed. Now on most small engines, the governor will limit the engine to 3,600 RPM. We of course fiddled with the governor and changed that to 4,200 RPM. Now there's a certain risk when modifying the governor settings, and there's a real potential to damage or destroy the engine. As most of you know, the Predator 420 is a clone engine, and its origins can be traced back to the Honda GX390. Now all joking aside, Honda makes real good stuff, and the GX390 is no exception. On the other hand, the Predator series engines are very impressive, but I just don't have the confidence to push one way past its design specifications. I feel like this 420 Hemi engine is likely to explode if we disable the governor, or at the very least, it would probably suck a valve. Anyway, in due time we will reinforce the engine to operate at higher RPM, but that's a topic for another video. So I was reading in the comments section, and someone pointed out that the 420 is not necessarily a lawnmower engine. They said it's more of a cement mixer engine. And you know what? They're right. So I guess I'm going to answer the question that nobody asked. And that is, how fast can we get this car to go with a cement mixer engine? I don't know. Let's find out. Next time on Robot Cantina, we'll head over to the Hillbilly Proving Grounds and test out our
Sprockets. Sprockets.
Sprockets.
Until next time.